Babylonian spirit, and she's sitting on top of the Antichrist, right? So basically, this spirit, the Babylonian spirit, is much like how the Jezebel and Ahab spirit is. Some spirits are connected to each other. Infirmity, bondage, and fear are spirits that are connected to each other. This spirit, the Babylonian spirit, is attached to the Antichrist spirit. And notice she sits on top of it. So in other words, some spirits have a fruit, but the root is Antichrist. So when you see the Babylonian spirit, and people say, oh, that's just how I am. You know, I don't like organized religion. I don't like this. You know, they kind of got this Babylonian thing. The root of that, the foundation of that is an Antichrist spirit. So I'm going to take some time to kind of go through this when it comes to the spirit of Babylon. Everybody say the spirit of Babylon. Say it again, the spirit of Babylon. Sometimes people are operating in this spirit and they have no idea that they're operating with a Babylonian spirit. I attempt to kind of just expose the spirit so that we can get victory in it. All right, so let's see what we got here. All right, look at this. If you know anything about the Babylon spirit, you know that Nebuchadnezzar, the most famous king for Babylon, he kind of had an ego problem, if you ask me, right? Something was wrong with him, but he wanted everybody to worship him. And at this time, he took over the whole world. He was the one that was basically the first superpower. You read Daniel, the book of Daniel, I forgot the chapter, he talks about there's a lion with wings, that's Babylon. Then he talks about the bear, that's Persia. Then he talks about the leopard with the 7 heads, that's Greece. Then he talks about another beast, that's Rome. And then he talks about the little horn, Antichrist. So there's these different spirits. Well, I'm gonna go back to Babylon. Babylon had a way of breaking people down and building them up a certain way. Before you can actually be a part of the Babylonian spirit, there has to be a breaking away of some of the things that you're used to. So in the book of Daniel, chapter 1, verse 6, first thing they did is what? Change the name. Y'all remember that? They changed their names. They changed the identity. This spirit wants to change the identity of who you are called to be. You're a child of God. You just sang that. But this spirit wants you to be more of the child of the world. So it changes like if you change your identity, you change the purpose of that person. My name is Lawrence Shakir. The name Lawrence means crowned with honor, or in other words, it means honorable. So just by the name, because the name Lawrence comes from the word Lauren, when they would put on those people when they win a Greek or a Roman Olympic Games, they put that wreath of laurels on them. So that means a crown of honor. My last name, Shakir, means thankful to God or grateful to God. And that name was given to me before I was born. But it's an identification of my purpose, of who I am and what I'm doing. Y'all get what I'm trying to say? And so your name is very important. So when Satan tries to change your name or your identity, we got all these different quote unquote identity politics and different identity things that people struggle with that identity. That's a Babylonian spirit. You hear me? So changes your godly heritage. Some of us has been raised in the way that we should go. But the Babylonian spirit is saying, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. Even though that's your godly inheritance, you've been raised in the things of God, you've been raised in church, you've been raised around these godly things. Your inheritance is to be a conqueror. But the Babylonian spirit is to keep you down, to get you to the point where you don't have that godly inheritance. So y'all follow what I'm saying? And so this spirit kind of comes in unaware, but the main purpose of it is an antichrist spirit to get you off focus. All right. We know this in Daniel chapter 1, verse 6. And where I have my notes right here is Daniel. His name means God is my judge, or vindication, right? But they changed his name to Belteshazzar, a name that invokes a Babylonian god, little g, of Baal. Thank God Daniel wrote his own book, because everybody else at that time was calling him Belteshazzar, but he said, nah, y'all can call me that, but that's not my name. My name is Daniel. So thank God for you, Daniel. You wrote your own book and called it Daniel, not Belteshazzar. The culture may call him Belteshazzar, but not Daniel. He said, no, I know who I am. I'm a child of God. You call me Daniel. But well, I thought your name was Belteshazzar. Don't worry about that. Call me Daniel. Everybody else may call me Belteshazzar. Same thing with what? Hananiah. His name, Hananiah, meant Yahweh, God is gracious. But they called him Shadrach, which means companion of Aku, which is another false god. Meshiel, who is like God. That's a name of praise, but became Meshach, again invoking Aku. And of course, Azariah, Yahweh is my help, God is my help, became Abednego, servant of Nebo. So Babylon wants to change your identity, change the purpose of who God called you to be, so he can break you down to build you up to be something else. Are y'all hearing me? So be careful of people trying to put labels on you. Be careful of people from the world who don't have a God agenda and telling you who you are. We gonna tell you who you are. You don't tell us who you are. No, we gonna tell you who you are. That's the kind of culture, my sister was saying, that's the kind of culture that's dangerous that we live in today. People are gonna tell you what you gonna do. People gonna tell you what you gonna say. And if they don't like what you got, they taking it off. They want to craft what they want you to say. Everybody say Babylon. So they changed the name. Another part of that, number 2, they changed the diet. Daniel chapter 1, verse 8. The influence is in your diet. In other words, what comes in you will affect who you are. So what kind of things are coming in you through the music, through the media, through the TV shows, through what people are talking about, people who's fixing your hair? What kind of things you got in you, because that's a spiritual diet. Are you reading the Word of God? Is your diet in the Word of God? Or are you reading Ebony magazine? I don't know, just threw that out there. So influence, or in other words, the information. What kind of information? Check some of your social media contacts. Do all of them say this that's going anti-God? All the information of the circle that you stand in, your circumstance, are all of your circle going another way and saying this is the way? Are they going down Broad Street? Because narrow is the way, but only a few find it. I'm not saying block everybody. I'm just saying pay attention to the circle that you stand in. That's why when it comes to, I guess, and again, I'm out of my mind when I say this, but when it comes to people like me that's in the fivefold, an officer, you can't just follow everybody, and you can't just agree with everything. There ought to be a certain stubbornness about you that says, no, I'm not going to eat that. I ain't eating that. They tried to feed that to Daniel and his friends, and they said, no, we ain't eating that. There ought to be something inside of you that says, I know where y'all going, but I ain't going with y'all. Call me whatever you want to call me, but I ain't going with y'all. Why? That diet is going to change my identity and my purpose. Your identity, also the strength. Your diet influences your strength, your authority. Your authority. In other words, some people are just not walking in their authority because they got that Babylonian spirit, because they want to be accepted by everybody. You're either going to please God or you're going to please man, but you can't do both. So some people, they just want to fit in so much that they're willing to push this to the side and say, well, you know what? Everybody else is not going that way. I think I'm going to just set this down. And here's the excuse. God knows my heart. We all heard that one, right? Lord knows my heart. Why y'all judging? The Lord know me. Yeah, they get all thug on you because that the demon spirits are breaking out. But when you hit them with the word, it's as sharp as a two-edged sword, and they start getting offended. So your diet will affect your authority. However, whatever you take in the most is going to dictate how you say. I can always tell when somebody is listening to another voice because they mimic and they echo the same talking points. You can tell. You're like, who you listening to? You ain't listening to the word. No, they sound just like what they've been listening to, just in their tone of voice. So they got to change their diet. They got to change their circle of friends. Are y'all getting anything out of this? You got to change your diet. If you expect to be something different, if you want to be real godly, your diet has to change. Like Daniel and his 3 friends, we ain't eating that. I don't care. Feed us vegetables, feed us fruit and water, and then you check and see if we have what you're looking for. So it affects your appearance. In other words, the Bible said they look better. Y'all remember that? They look better. So in other words, there's something about you that when you walk in the room, there is a spiritual attractiveness that people say, who is that person? Yes, you can be physically beautiful, but it's something about that you had a beautiful spirit. Because you look like a drunk quail, but you have that beautiful spirit about you, and people be like, that's a real Christian. So it's not about how physically pretty you are. I mean, some people are gifted with just beauty, but some people of us, we need help. And you need that beautiful spirit. And that's what causes you to stand out more, because you're not like everybody else at your job. All right? And what else I got on there? Your spiritual gifts, it'll affect your spiritual gifts. Did you know at this time when Daniel decided not to eat the king's fruit, that when Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, he had enough spiritual gifts to interpret that dream? Because he wasn't eating with everybody else. All the other magicians, all the other magicians, they couldn't interpret the dream. They was eating the wrong food, the wrong diet. But Daniel said, no, I'm in a position because my diet is right. So when it comes to the spirit of Babylon, you're going to have to buck against the system a little bit. And everybody ain't going to like you. But if you can stand to be hated, you will walk through troops and you will leap over a wall. But some people, they just, no, I got to have my friends. You post up there and nobody gives you no thumbs up, and you're like, oh, well, that's fine. It's okay. And you look at everybody else, they get all these thumbs up and hearts and all these comments. And you're like, oh, what about me? Well, maybe they censoring you. Or maybe people got that Babylonian spirit so much that they say, oh, you one of them. It's okay to be one of them. Daniel and his friends were the minority, right? Everybody else was going with the flow. These 4 boys were the ones that were excluded because they wasn't going on with the flow, right? So I'd much rather be like Daniel and his friends, Hananiah and the right names. I know we call them Shadrach, Meshach, and that bad Negro, but their real names were Hananiah and all them other good names, right? So if they would have wrote their book, they would have called it Hananiah. But needless to say. Last thing that I got is they will change your worship. The Babylonian spirit changes your worship. In Daniel chapter 3, y'all all knew I was going to go there, right? When you hear all these sounds of music, you need to bow down and worship the image that I have set up. It's conditioned you to react a certain way when you hear this or when you see that. You ought to just be programmed to just go and do the same thing. The Babylonian spirit is a spirit that what we call today a council culture. If you don't do what we ask you to do, we're going to block you and counsel you. That's a Babylonian spirit. But let's take it into the church. Some of us who call ourselves godly may walk in with a Babylonian spirit because I want to hear the organ play before I give God praise. I want to hear the preacher to hoop a certain way before I believe that we had a move of God. Y'all see what I'm saying? So we can't put God in a box because we want to hear something but before we react to something. We can't do that. Enter into his courts with thanksgiving and enter his gates with praise. Be thankful. So in other words, we thank God for all the things that make up our churches. But does that dictate your relationship with God? Y'all hearing me? We have to get to the point where even if there is no musicians, even if we don't have worship, can you still bring the glory?